She opened the door expecting to see her lover. Instead, she found his wife. Her aunt. And she never walked out. What would you do if you discovered your husband was having an affair? Most people would confront them. Maybe call a lawyer. Scream, cry, pack their bags. But what if I told you there's a woman who did none of those things? Instead, she waited. She watched. She collected evidence like she was building a case. Because that's exactly what she was doing. And when the moment was right, she didn't just expose the affair. She ended it. Permanently. This is the story of Anabelle, a logistics operator who tracked shipments across borders for a living. The woman who could find a missing container in Monterey or trace a delayed truck through 3 states using nothing but timestamps and toll records. So when her husband started acting strange, weird mileage on his truck, unexplained charges, Tuesday afternoons that didn't match his calendar, she noticed. And when she unlocked his phone one night and saw who he was texting, it wasn't just any woman. It was family. I'm talking about a 19-year-old intern, working in their company, sitting at their holiday table. Someone who called her Aunt Anabelle while smiling in family photos and sleeping with her husband in secret. But here's the thing about secrets, they leave trails. Text messages. Location pins. A phrase that kept appearing over and over, the usual place. Anabelle found that place. A cabin on the coast where no one ever goes. And when her husband tried to end the affair and the girl refused to let go, that's when Anabelle sent a message. From his phone. In his words. One simple text that lured a 19-year-old to a remote cabin, thinking she was meeting the man she loved. She wasn't. If you want to know how far someone will go when betrayal happens under their own roof, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment and tell me, would you confront a cheater, or would you plan something they'd never see coming? And subscribe, because what I'm about to show you is how a summer storm, a family business, and a missing customs form led to murder. Let me take you back to the beginning. Summer 2024. Houston, Texas. Lucy Alvarez stepped into Alvarez Logistics Group with her entire future ahead of her. 19 years old, fresh out of San Antonio, and this was her shot. Her first real internship, handed to her by family. Her dad Mark ran the company alongside his sister Anabelle. It was a lean operation, moving freight between Houston, Laredo, Brownsville, and Monterey. Tight margins. Tighter deadlines. The kind of business where one mistake could cost thousands. Lucy wasn't scared. She was eager. She wanted to prove she belonged there, that she wasn't just the boss's daughter getting a free ride. She started in Laredo, learning border paperwork, customs forms, manifests, the unglamorous backbone of cross-border logistics. Then they rotated her to Houston, where the real action happened. Dispatch, scheduling, client calls, crisis management. That's where she met Charles Whitaker. Charles was Anabelle's husband. He'd worked at Alvarez Logistics for years as director of strategic sourcing, vendor relationships, cost negotiations, supply chain strategy. Solid guy. Quiet, dependable. The kind of man who kept his head down and did the work. He and Anabelle had been married for over a decade. No kids. Just the business and each other. At least, that's what it looked like from the outside. She didn't realize it until Charles walked into the office. He didn't yell. Didn't embarrass her in front of the team. He just pulled her aside, calm as ever, and said, "Hey, let me show you something." He fixed it in under 5 minutes. Called the right person, got the signature expedited, sent the corrected form through before anyone upstream even noticed the error. Crisis averted. But then he did something that stuck with her. He sat down and walked her through what she'd done right. The parts of the form she'd filled out perfectly. The timing of her submission. The way she'd flagged the load as priority without being told to. He didn't treat her like an idiot. He treated her like someone worth teaching. "You've got good instincts," he told her. "You just need reps. You'll get there." That night, Lucy texted him. "Thanks again for today. I would have been toast without you." He replied 20 minutes later. "No problem. You're doing great. Don't be so hard on yourself." It should have ended there. It didn't. The next day, he brought her coffee. Made a joke about how she looked like she'd been up all night studying manifests. She laughed. It felt easy. Natural. Like talking to someone who actually saw her, not just the boss's daughter trying to prove herself. A week later, there was another family dinner, one of those awkward Alvarez logistics gatherings where business and family blurred together. Anabelle and Charles sat on opposite sides of the patio, barely looked at each other. Anabelle spent the whole night on her phone, firing off emails. Charles left early, said he had a headache. Lucy texted him later that night. "Are you okay?" He didn't reply right away. But when he did, it was honest in a way she didn't expect. "Yeah, just a long day. Marriage stuff. Nothing you need to worry about." And that's how it started. Not with a grand gesture or a drunken mistake. Just small moments. A text here. A conversation there. A mentor relationship that slowly, quietly, became something else. Within 2 weeks, they were texting every day. Within a month, those texts turned into phone calls after hours. And within 6 weeks, Charles suggested they meet up after work, just to talk, away from the office, away from family. "There's a supplier I need to check on near Freeport," he said. "Want to ride along? Could be good for you to see how vendor relationships work in person." Lucy said yes. They never made it to the supplier. Instead, Charles drove her down the Bluewater Highway, past the dunes and the beach towns, to a place he said he'd found years ago. A weathered cabin near San Luis Pass. Quiet, isolated. The kind of place where you could hear the wind in the grass and the waves hitting the pylons below. "No one ever comes out here," he said. Lucy looked at him. And in that moment, she knew exactly what this was. She didn't leave. And just like that, they had a secret. And a place to keep it. Their usual place. Anabelle Alvarez didn't find out about the affair because someone told her. She found out the way she found everything, by paying attention. You don't run a logistics operation without learning how to read patterns. A truck that's supposed to be in Laredo but pings tolls in San Antonio? That's a problem. A vendor invoice that doesn't match the quoted price? That's a red flag. A husband whose Tuesday mileage logs don't line up with his calendar? That's a lie. It started small. Charles said he had a vendor meeting in League City, but when Anabelle checked the company Easy Tag records, something she did routinely for expense audits, his truck had pinged near Surfside Beach. 30 miles in the wrong direction. She didn't confront him. She filed it away. The next week, he told her he was working late on a sourcing report. She called the office at 8 p.m. to ask him something about a contract. No answer. His truck wasn't in the lot. She checked the logs again the next morning. He'd driven south. Toward the coast. Again. Still, she didn't say anything. Because Anabelle didn't operate on suspicion. She operated on proof. Then came the family barbecue. It was a Saturday in late July. The whole Alvarez crew gathered at Mark's house. Aunts, uncles, cousins, the usual crowd. Lucy was there, laughing with some of the younger cousins, wearing a sundress Anabelle had never seen before. And perfume. Something floral and expensive. Lucy never wore perfume. Charles barely looked at his wife all afternoon. He spent most of the time near the grill with Mark, nursing a beer, checking his phone every few minutes. At one point, Anabelle saw Lucy glance at Charles. Just for a second. And he glanced back. It wasn't obvious. Most people wouldn't have caught it. But Anabelle did. That's when the pieces started clicking together. The late nights. The weird mileage. The vendor meetings that didn't quite add up. And now this. Lucy, 19 years old, her niece, wearing new perfume and stealing glances at Anabelle's husband like they shared a secret. Anabelle excused herself to get more drinks from the kitchen. Charles followed a minute later, said he'd grab the sodas from the cooler. He set his phone down on the counter, just for a second, while he walked outside to the garage fridge. Anabelle picked it up. Not to snoop. Just to move it out of the way. But the screen lit up. A notification banner. A text preview. "Lucy, miss you already." Anabelle stared at it. 3 words. That's all it took. She set the phone back down exactly where it had been. Walked back outside, smiled, handed out drinks. Played the role of the gracious host. But inside? She was already building the case. That night, after Charles fell asleep, Anabelle sat in the dark with her laptop open. She thought about confronting him. screaming, throwing him out. But what would that accomplish? A messy divorce? A fractured family business? Lucy playing the victim, crying about how she didn't mean for it to happen, how it just felt right. Anabelle wasn't interested in drama. She was interested in control. So instead of waking him up, instead of demanding answers, she did something smarter. She waited until he got up to use the bathroom. Then she picked up his phone, held it up to his sleeping face, and unlocked it with Face ID. It took her less than 2 minutes to link his messaging app to her laptop. It wasn't hacking, it was just using the built-in sync feature most people forget exists. Apple makes it easy. You just need access once. And now she had it. From that moment on, every text Charles sent, every message he received, Anabelle saw it. In real time. On her screen. Like watching a show she wasn't supposed to be part of. She scrolled back through the thread with Lucy. Weeks of messages. Can't stop thinking about you. Usual place tomorrow? She's working late, we have time. I know this is complicated, but I need you. Anabelle read every single one. No emotion. No tears. Just data. Just evidence. And then she saw the location pins. GPS coordinates. A pattern. They had a place. She went there on a Wednesday afternoon, alone. Told the office she had a site visit in Freeport. No one questioned it. Anabelle was always handling something, always putting out fires. She threw on sunglasses, a baseball cap, and drove. The Bluewater Highway curved along the coast, past beach houses and bait shops and stretches of empty sand. She followed the route she'd seen in the messages, the same turns Charles had taken a dozen times, until the road dipped toward the water and she saw it. A cabin. Weathered gray wood. Low steps. A view of nothing but dunes and sky. It looked exactly like a secret should. Anabelle parked where the sand met the scrub. Got out. Walked up to the porch. The door wasn't locked. Why would it be? No one came out here. Inside, it smelled like salt and old wood. There was a couch. A blanket. A table with 2 coffee mugs still sitting on it. She didn't touch anything. Just stood there, listening to the wind push through the gaps in the walls, the waves thudding against the pylons below. This was where her husband brought her niece. This was where they pretended the rest of the world didn't exist. Anabelle stayed for 10 minutes. Maybe 15. Long enough to memorize the layout. The exits. The isolation. Then she got back in her car and drove home. She didn't cry. She didn't scream into the steering wheel or punch the dashboard. She just thought. And by the time she pulled into her driveway, she'd made her decision. A week later, Charles told Lucy it was over. Anabelle watched the whole conversation unfold on her laptop. Charles, we can't keep doing this. I need to fix my marriage. Lucy, you said that last time. Charles, I mean it this time. I'm sorry. Lucy, you can't just erase me. Charles, I'm not trying to erase you. I just need space. Lucy, so that's it? You're just done. Charles didn't reply. Lucy sent 3 more messages. Then 4. Then she stopped. Anabelle read every word. Cool as a port audit. And then she started typing. For 3 days, Lucy heard nothing. No texts. No calls. No, just checking in messages from Charles. Just silence. She told herself he needed time. That he was working through things with Anabelle. That he'd come back. He always came back. But by day 4, the silence was eating her alive. She texted him again. Lucy, I'm not going anywhere. You know that, right? No response. Lucy, we can figure this out. Just talk to me. Nothing. Lucy, Charles, please. Read receipt. But no reply. Lucy stared at her phone, rage and heartbreak tangled up in her chest. She wasn't some fling he could just shut out. She wasn't a mistake he could erase by ignoring her. She was real. What they had was real. And if he thought he could just walk away without a conversation, he was wrong. She almost drove to his house. Almost showed up at the office and forced him to look at her. But something stopped her. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the last shred of self-preservation telling her that showing up unannounced would make everything worse. So instead, she waited. And on the 5th day, her phone finally lit up. Charles was in Corpus Christi on a legitimate vendor tour. 2 days of meetings with a shipping supplier, completely above board, completely documented. Anabelle had verified it herself. She knew his schedule better than he did, which made it the perfect window. She sat in her home office, laptop open, his messaging app mirrored on her screen. She'd been watching Lucy spiral for days, text after text, each one more desperate than the last. Anabelle had read every word, watched the girl unravel in real time. And now it was time to reel her in. She opened Charles's message thread with Lucy, stared at the cursor blinking on the empty text field. She knew his voice, his patterns, the way he texted, short, careful, never too emotional. She'd been reading his messages for weeks. She could write them in her sleep. She typed, "Charles, usual place? 6 p.m., need to talk." Short, direct, familiar. Exactly the kind of message he'd send if he was finally ready to have the conversation Lucy had been begging for. Anabelle hovered over the send button for exactly 3 seconds. Then she pressed it. Lucy's phone buzzed on her nightstand. She grabbed it so fast she nearly dropped it. "Charles, usual place? 6 p.m., need to talk." Her heart slammed in her chest. He was ready. He was finally ready to stop running, to figure this out, to choose her. She didn't even think. Just typed back immediately. "Lucy, I'll be there, my love," with a red heart. She checked the time. 4:47 p.m. That gave her an hour to get ready, maybe an hour and a half if traffic was light. She threw on jeans and the sundress top he liked, the one he'd complimented at the barbecue. Grabbed her keys. Told her roommate she'd be out for a while. And then she drove. Down I-45 toward the coast. Past Galveston. Onto the Bluewater Highway, where the road stretched out along the dunes and the sky opened up wide and endless. She rolled the windows down. Let the salt air whip through the car. Her hands were shaking on the steering wheel, not from fear, but from hope. This was it. The moment everything changed. The moment he stopped pretending they didn't matter. By the time she pulled off the highway and onto the sandy access road, the sun was starting to dip low. Golden light stretched across the water, turning the cabin into a silhouette against the sky. She parked next to the scrub grass, checked her reflection in the rearview mirror, took a breath. 6:12 p.m. She got out of the car. The wind pulled at her hair. Gulls called from somewhere down the beach. The cabin looked the same as always, weathered wood, low steps, the door slightly warped from years of salt and humidity. She climbed the steps, put her hand on the latch. For a split second, something felt off. Charles's truck wasn't there. But maybe he'd parked on the other side. Maybe he'd walked down from the road. Maybe he was already inside, waiting. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. Back in Houston, Anabelle closed her laptop. She'd watched the read receipt appear under her message 20 minutes ago. Watched Lucy type back immediately. Watched the little location dot on Charles's phone, because Lucy had shared her location with him months ago, thinking it was romantic. Move south along the highway, then stop. Right where the cabin was. Anabelle stood up, grabbed her keys, and drove. What happened inside that cabin is something only 2 people know for certain. And only one of them is still alive to tell it. What we know is this: Lucy arrived at 6:12 p.m. Her car was found parked near the scrub grass 2 days later, keys still in the ignition, purse on the passenger seat. Her phone was inside, battery dead. Anabelle's vehicle was spotted on a traffic camera heading south on the Bluewater Highway at 6:34 p.m. Heading toward San Luis Pass. Not away from it. By the time the sun set that night, Lucy Alvarez had vanished. The few details that surfaced later came from the forensic sweep of the cabin, the one police conducted after Lucy's car was found. There were signs of a struggle. Not massive. Not the kind of scene you'd expect from a violent attack. But something had happened. A coffee table was pushed several inches from its original position. You could see the drag marks in the dust. 2 wooden chairs were overturned. And on the floor near the door, investigators found a single earring. Lucy's. The back clasp was still attached, like it had been ripped off in a sudden movement. But here's what made it strange. There was no blood. No weapon. No signs of a prolonged fight. Just displacement. Like someone had tried to leave, and someone else had stopped them. Witnesses placed pieces together later, though none of them realized it at the time. A fisherman at the pier a half-mile down the coast said he heard shouting around 6:30 p.m. Couldn't make out words, just two voices, both female, carried on the wind. One was higher-pitched, frantic. The other was lower, controlled. He didn't think much of it. People argue on the beach all the time. Another detail, a couple walking their dog on the access road around 7:15 p.m. saw a woman standing near a car by the cabin. Alone. Staring out at the water. They described her as calm. Mid-30s, dark hair pulled back, wearing jeans and a gray jacket. That description matched Anabelle. When police asked her about it weeks later, she said yes, she'd driven out there. She'd been worried about Lucy. Mark had mentioned she wasn't answering her phone, and Anabelle knew Lucy sometimes went to the coast to clear her head. She'd driven around looking for her. Checked a few spots. Didn't find anything. She didn't mention that the cabin was one of those spots. And no one thought to ask. Some people think it started as a confrontation. That Anabelle walked in, and Lucy realized immediately this wasn't Charles. This was the wife. And everything came spilling out. Maybe Lucy tried to defend herself. Tried to say it wasn't her fault, that Charles had pursued her, that she was just 19 and didn't know better. Maybe Anabelle stayed calm at first. Told Lucy it was over. Told her to leave the company, leave Houston, disappear quietly, and no one had to know. But Lucy didn't want to disappear. She wanted Charles. She said so. Maybe she even threatened to tell everyone, Mark, the whole family, the whole company, that Anabelle's marriage was a sham and that Charles loved someone else. And that's when things escalated. Maybe Lucy tried to leave. Grabbed her keys, headed for the door. And Anabelle blocked her path. Maybe Lucy pushed past her. And Anabelle pushed back. The overturned chairs. The drag table. The ripped earring. It doesn't take much force to make someone fall wrong. Hit their head on the corner of a table. Go still. Or maybe it wasn't an accident at all. Maybe Anabelle brought something with her. Something small. Something that wouldn't leave evidence behind if you knew how to use it. A coastline has plenty of tools, ropes, weights, anchors. And the tide at San Luis Pass rises fast. By 9 p.m. that night, the cabin was empty. The coast was dark. And Lucy's phone stopped pinging cell towers. Anabelle drove back to Houston with her windows down, salt air in her lungs, the same calm expression she'd worn all day. She stopped at a gas station on the way. Bought a coffee. Paid cash. The clerk remembered her because she seemed so unbothered. Most people who drive out to the coast that late come back tired, wind-blown, emotional. She looked like she'd just finished a business meeting. Charles got back from Corpus Christi late Thursday night. He walked into the house, dropped his bag by the door, and pulled out his phone to check messages. That's when he noticed something strange. His message thread with Lucy, the one that had been going for months, hundreds of texts deep, was gone. Completely erased. Not archived. Not hidden. Deleted. He scrolled through his recent conversations. Nothing. He checked his deleted folder. Empty. He stared at the screen, confused. Had he deleted it by accident? Had his phone glitched? He opened his recent calls. The log had been cleared too. And that's when Anabelle walked into the room. "How was Corpus?" she asked. Calm, even like nothing in the world had changed. "Fine," he said slowly, still staring at his phone. Meetings ran long. She nodded. Poured herself a glass of water. Lucy didn't show up to work today. Charles looked up. "Mark's been calling her all afternoon," Anabelle continued, her tone casual. No answer. Her roommate said she left yesterday evening and never came back. Charles felt something cold settle in his stomach. Did she say where she was going? Anabelle asked, looking directly at him now. He opened his mouth. Closed it. "No," he said finally. "I haven't talked to her in days." Anabelle held his gaze for a long moment. And in that moment, Charles understood. Not everything. But enough. Enough to know that asking questions would be dangerous. Enough to know that whatever happened to Lucy, his wife had been involved. and enough to know that the message thread disappearing wasn't an accident. It was a warning. Then Anabelle nodded. "I'm sure she'll turn up." And she walked out of the room. The search for Lucy Alvarez lasted 3 weeks. Her car was found abandoned near San Luis Pass. No signs of struggle in the vehicle. No blood. No witnesses who saw anything concrete. The police questioned everyone. Family, friends, co-workers. Charles told them he was her mentor, that they'd worked together at the company, that he hadn't seen her in over a week. Anabelle told them Lucy had been stressed lately, that she'd seemed distracted at work, that she'd even driven out to the coast looking for her when she heard Lucy was missing. No one ever searched Charles's phone. Why would they? The message thread was gone. The call logs were wiped. There was nothing to find. And the cabin? The overturned chairs were noted. The earring was bagged as evidence. But without a body, without witnesses, without a clear timeline, it proved nothing. Just a messy room in an isolated building that dozens of people could have accessed over the years. 3 months later, the case went cold. Lucy Alvarez was declared a missing person. And life at Alvarez Logistics went on. So let me ask you again, what would you do? If you discovered your spouse was cheating on you with a family member, would you confront them in the moment? Would you scream, cry, call a lawyer, and burn everything down? Or would you do what Anabelle did? Wait, watch, collect evidence, and strike when they least expected it? Because here's the thing. Anabelle didn't just kill Lucy. She erased her. Wiped the message thread. Cleared the call logs. Chose a location where the tide does the cleanup for you. And then she went back to work like nothing happened, playing the role of the grieving aunt while investigators chased dead ends. Charles never got caught. Lucy's body was never found. And the only person who knows the full truth is the woman who sits in her COO office every morning, tracking shipments, managing logistics, keeping everything running on time. Just like she always has. 3 people walked into this story. A husband who thought he could have it all. A 19-year-old who believed love would win. And a wife who proved that patience is the deadliest weapon. Only 2 walked out. If this story shook you, hit that like button right now and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment and tell me, who do you think is most guilty here? The cheating husband who started it? The young girl who refused to let go? Or the wife who ended it permanently? And if you want more stories where betrayal, revenge, and family secrets collide in the darkest ways possible, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because trust me, this isn't the only time someone's used technology to get away with murder. Thanks for watching. And remember, some texts should never be answered.